I woke up on the operating table, gasping for air, and the first thing I saw was the empty chair where my mother should have been sitting. The anesthesiologist's face swam into view above me, her eyes wide with panic. "She's awake! She shouldn't be awake!" Pain exploded through my chest like someone had driven a spike through my sternum. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. My body convulsed, and suddenly I was seeing everything from above, watching myself seize on that table, watching the medical team scramble, watching the monitors flatline. And then I was 14 again, sitting at the breakfast table on a Tuesday morning in September, with my entire life ahead of me and the knowledge of exactly how it would end. The glass of orange juice in my hand was cool and solid, real. My father sat across from me, reading the newspaper like he always did, his reading glasses perched on his nose. My mother hummed as she packed lunches by the counter, and my sister Claire, golden, perfect Claire, bounced down the stairs in her ballet outfit, her blonde ponytail swinging. "Mom, you didn't forget about my recital tonight, right?" Claire's voice was bright and musical, the voice of someone who had never been denied anything in her entire life. "Of course not, sweetheart," Mom said, turning to smile at her. The smile she never gave me. "We'll be in the front row like always." I stared at my juice, my heart pounding. This was real. I had died on that operating table at 17, alone because my parents had chosen Claire's stupid ballet recital over my emergency surgery, and somehow I had been sent back. Back to 3 years before my death. Back to when I still had time. In my previous life, I had spent these 3 years trying to be good enough, trying to earn their love. I had stayed quiet when they missed my award ceremonies for Claire's dance competitions. I had nodded and smiled when they spent my college fund on a grand piano Claire played twice. I had even forgiven them when they chose her recital over my surgery, right up until the moment I died alone with only nurses holding my hand. But I wasn't that girl anymore. "Evie, did you hear me?" My father's voice cut through my thoughts. "I asked if you finished your homework." "Yes, Dad." The words came automatically, muscle memory from a life I'd already lived. "Good. We need you to be more responsible this year. Claire's audition for the National Ballet Academy is coming up, and we can't have any distractions." I was 14 years old, and I was already a distraction. Not a daughter, a distraction. I looked at my father's face, the face I had loved so desperately in my previous life, and felt nothing but cold calculation. He would never love me. None of them would. And this time, I wasn't going to waste 3 years figuring that out. "Actually, Dad, I need to talk to you about something." The words came out steady, calm, not the pleading voice of the old Evie who had begged for scraps of attention. "I've been having some health issues, chest pains, difficulty breathing." My mother turned from the counter, her expression already annoyed. "Evie, don't be dramatic, you're fine. Teenagers always think something's wrong with them." "I'm serious, Mom. I think I should see a doctor." "We'll make an appointment next month," she said dismissively, turning back to Claire's lunch. "After Claire's audition. We're too busy right now." Next month. In my previous life, they had said the same thing, and next month had turned into next month, until I collapsed at school, and they found the congenital heart defect that had been slowly killing me. By then, it was too late for a simple fix. I had needed emergency surgery, and even that hadn't been enough. But this time, I knew exactly what was wrong with me, and I knew exactly how to survive. "Okay," I said softly, playing the obedient daughter one last time. "Next month." Claire smiled at me, that sweet, innocent smile that made everyone love her. She had no idea that she was the favorite. In her mind, she probably thought our parents treated us equally. She had never had to fight for anything, so she didn't understand what it meant to lose. She would learn. I spent the next week in the school library researching everything I could about Dr. Elizabeth Chen, the cardiovascular surgeon who would eventually operate on me, too late, in my previous life. She was brilliant, one of the best in the country, and she had cried when I died on her table. I remembered her face, the guilt in her eyes, even though my death hadn't been her fault. It had been my parents' fault. They had delayed and delayed until a routine surgery became an emergency, and an emergency became a catastrophe. But Dr. Chen had told me something in those final moments as I drifted in and out of consciousness. She had told me about a program she ran, a charity that provided free heart surgeries to children whose families couldn't afford treatment. She had told me that if I had just come to her directly, she could have helped me. I hadn't understood then. I had been too weak, too close to death. But now, with 3 years of memories I shouldn't have, I understood perfectly. Dr. Chen's program was for low-income families, families who couldn't pay, and my family, despite my father's 6-figure salary and my mother's inheritance, had qualified me for that program by refusing to spend money on my health care. They had made a choice. Claire's dreams were worth their money. My life was not. I printed out the application forms during lunch, hiding them in my backpack between my math textbook and my journal. That night, while my parents drove Claire to her ballet practice, I filled them out with shaking hands. Name, Evelyn Marie Winters, age 14. Condition, congenital heart defect, suspected ventricular septal defect with complications. How did I know that? How did a 14-year-old girl self-diagnose a complex size heart condition? I couldn't explain it on the form, so I didn't try. I just described my symptoms with the precision of someone who had lived with them for 3 years and died from them. The chest pain that felt like drowning, the exhaustion that made every step feel like running a marathon, the blue tinge to my lips when I overexerted myself. In the section asking about family financial status, I hesitated. Then I wrote the truth. Parents refused to seek treatment or pay for medical care. All family funds allocated to sisters' extracurricular activities. It felt like betrayal, writing those words. The old Evie would have protected them, made excuses for them, but the old Evie was dead, and I was just trying not to follow her. I mailed the application the next morning before school, walking 3 blocks to the post office so my parents wouldn't see. Then I went to class and pretended everything was normal. 2 weeks later, Dr. Chen's office called. My mother answered. "Yes, this is Evelyn's mother," she said, her voice taking on that particular tone of annoyance she reserved for interruptions. "What is this about?" I watched from the doorway as her expression shifted from annoyance to confusion to anger. "Excuse me, my daughter did not apply for charity medical care. There must be some mistake. Our family is perfectly capable of—" She paused, listening. Her face went red. "That is absolutely not true. We provide excellent care for both our daughters. Evelyn is perfectly healthy. This is clearly some kind of prank, or—" She was cut off again. This time, the pause was longer. When she spoke again, her voice was ice. "I see. Yes, I understand. We'll discuss this and get back to you." She hung up and turned to me with fury in her eyes. "Evelyn Marie Winters, get down here right now." I walked down the stairs slowly, keeping my face neutral. Inside, my heart was racing. The damaged, dying heart that was slowly killing me while they paid thousands for Claire's private ballet lessons. "Did you apply for charity medical care behind our backs?" "Yes." The simplicity of my answer seemed to stun her. The old Evie would have apologized, groveled, tried to explain. The new Evie just stood there waiting. "How dare you?" my mother hissed. "How dare you embarrass this family like that? Making it sound like we neglect you, like we don't provide for you." "You don't," my voice was calm. "I've been telling you for 2 weeks that I need to see a doctor. You said next month. You always say next month. Because you're fine. You're being dramatic, just like always, trying to take attention away from your sister. I'm dying." The words hung in the air between us. My mother stared at me, her mouth open. "I have a heart defect," I continued, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. "A hole in my heart. If I don't get surgery in the next year, I'll die. Dr. Chen can fix it now for free through her program, or you can keep ignoring it and spend my college fund on another grand piano for Claire." "That's enough," my father's voice came from behind me. I hadn't heard him come in. "Go to your room, Evelyn, now." I went, and as I climbed the stairs, I heard them arguing in furious whispers, my mother's voice shrill with indignation and my father's low and angry. They weren't worried about my heart. They were worried about what the neighbors would think if word got out that they'd let their daughter apply for charity care. 3 days later, Dr. Chen called again. This time, she asked to speak to me. "Evelyn," Her voice was warm, professional, the same voice I remembered from my deathbed. "Your application has been approved. I'd like you to come in for a full cardiac workup next week." "Can you do that?" "My parents? I've spoken with your parents," she said, and there was an edge to her voice now. "They've agreed to the evaluation. After that, we'll discuss treatment options." I closed my eyes, relief flooding through me so intensely it made me dizzy. "Thank you." "Evelyn," she said softly. "Sweetheart, your symptoms are serious. Why didn't you tell someone at school? A teacher? A counselor?" "Because I had, in my previous life. And they had called my parents, who had smiled and reassured them that they were handling it, that they would take care of it. And then they had yelled at me all the way home for causing a scene." "I'm telling someone now," I said. The cardiac workup confirmed what I already knew. I had a ventricular septal defect with complications, a hole in the wall between the lower chambers of my heart. Blood was flowing the wrong way, forcing my heart to work harder and harder to pump oxygen through my body. Eventually, in 3 years, if everything went exactly as it had before, my heart would simply give out. But it didn't have to. "The good news," Dr. Chen said, sitting across from me and my parents in her office, "is that we caught this early. With surgery, Evelyn can expect to live a completely normal life. Without it—" She paused, looking directly at my mother. "Without treatment, the mortality rate for a defect this severe is nearly 100% within 5 years." My mother's face was pale. My father's jaw was clenched. And Claire, who had insisted on coming along because she wanted to support me, looked genuinely scared. "How soon?" my father asked, asides. "I'd like to schedule the surgery for next month. Evelyn's young, she's relatively healthy otherwise, and her recovery should be straightforward. But we can't wait much longer." Next month? Claire's audition for the National Ballet Academy was next month. I watched my parents exchange a look, and I knew exactly what they were thinking. I had seen this moment before, just 3 years later. The same calculation in their eyes, weighing my life against Claire's dreams. In my previous life, they had chosen Claire. The audition was too important, too expensive to reschedule. They had postponed my surgery, promised we'd do it right after, just a few more weeks. Those weeks had turned into months. By the time I collapsed at school and they rushed me to the emergency room, the damage was catastrophic. "Next month," my mother said slowly. "That's when Claire's audition?" "I'm aware of the conflict," Dr. Chen said, and her voice had gone cold. "I pulled Evelyn's application personally when I saw that you'd spent over $50,000 on dance training in the past year while ignoring your daughter's documented health complaints." The room went silent. "Mrs. Winters," Dr. Chen continued, "I want to be very clear. If you delay this surgery, you will be choosing your daughter's death. Not today, not tomorrow, but soon, and I will not operate when it becomes an emergency because you couldn't prioritize your child's life. This is my offer once. Surgery next month. Through my program, at no cost to you. If you refuse, I'll be reporting this case to Child Protective Services." My mother's face went from pale to red. "You can't threaten us." "I'm not threatening you. I'm protecting my patient." Dr. Chen turned to me, her expression softening. "Evelyn, do you want this surgery?" "Yes," I said. My voice didn't shake. "Then we'll schedule it. Mr. and Ms. Winters, you'll receive the paperwork tomorrow. The surgery will be on November 15th. November 15th, the day of Claire's audition. We drove home in absolute silence. Claire was crying softly in the back seat. My parents stared straight ahead, their faces carved from stone. When we got home, my mother went straight to her room. My father poured himself a drink, and another, and another. And Claire followed me up to my room, tears streaming down her face. "Evie," she whispered, "I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I didn't know you were sick." I looked at her, this girl who had everything I had ever wanted. Our parents' love, their money, their attention, their pride. This girl who existed in a world where everything was given freely, who had never had to fight for a single scrap of affection. "I know," I said. And I did. Claire wasn't cruel. She was just oblivious, wrapped so tightly in our parents' love that she couldn't see how they starved me right beside her. Mama and Dad will figure something out, Claire said, reaching for my hand. Maybe I can reschedule my audition, or Don't. I pulled my hand away. Don't sacrifice anything for me, Claire. You won't have to. She looked confused, hurt. What do you mean? I mean they're going to choose you. They always choose you, and that's okay. Evie, no, they wouldn't. They will. I met her eyes. And when they do, remember this moment. Remember that you knew, and you let them. I wasn't being fair. Claire was only 11, just a child. But I had died at 17, alone and unloved, and fairness had died with me. The next week crawled by. My parents didn't speak to me except when necessary. They didn't discuss the surgery, didn't ask how I was feeling, didn't acknowledge the ticking time bomb in my chest. They just moved through the house like ghosts, and I knew they were trying to find a way out. On Thursday evening, my father called a family meeting. We sat in the living room, the four of us, and the tension was thick enough to choke on. My father cleared his throat. We've thought about this carefully, he began, and we believe we found a solution that works for everyone. I waited. I already knew what was coming. Claire's audition is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The National Ballet Academy only holds auditions once a year, and if she misses this one, she'll have to wait until she's 12. That's too old to start in their program. It's now or never. But Evie's surgery, Claire started, can be rescheduled, my mother cut in. Dr. Chen is being unreasonable. There are other excellent surgeons who can perform this operation. We've consulted with several, and they all agree that waiting a few more weeks won't make a significant difference. I felt something cold settle in my chest, where my broken heart struggled to beat. They had lied to me. Or maybe they hadn't asked at all. Either way, they had decided. So, my father continued, we'll postpone the surgery until after Claire's audition. Just a few weeks. Then we'll schedule it with a different doctor and everything will work out fine. No. They all turned to look at me. No, my father repeated. No, you won't reschedule my surgery. I'll have it on November 15th, like Dr. Chen scheduled. And you can go to Claire's audition, both of you. My mother's eyes narrowed. Evelyn, you're 14 years old. You don't get to make these decisions. Actually, I do. I signed the consent forms myself. Dr. Chen witnessed them. And she's already reported you to CPS. So if I die because you prevent me from having this surgery, you'll both go to jail. I was bluffing about the consent forms. I was too young to sign without parental permission. But I wasn't bluffing about the CPS report. Dr. Chen had made good on that threat. My father stood up, his face purple with rage. You ungrateful little... Michael! My mother grabbed his arm. She's bluffing. She has to be. Call Dr. Chen and find out. I stood up too, keeping my voice level. Ask her about the CPS report. Ask her about the court order she's prepared to seek if you try to prevent my surgery. Or don't ask and just go to Claire's audition. See what happens. The room was silent except for Claire's quiet sobbing. She had buried her face in her hands and her whole body was shaking. This isn't fair, my mother whispered. Why are you doing this to us? The laugh that escaped me was bitter and sharp. You're asking me why I'm doing this to you? I'm trying not to die, Mom. That's all I've ever been trying to do. But you've been too busy funding Claire's dreams to notice I was having nightmares. We love you both equally, my father said, but his voice was weak. No, you don't, and that's okay. I've accepted it, but don't lie to me now, Dad. Not when we both know the truth. I walked out of the living room and up to my room, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Behind me, I heard Claire's voice, thick with tears. Mom, Dad, please, just come to Evie's surgery, please. I can audition next year. And my mother's response, Sweetheart, you don't understand. This is your future. I closed my door and leaned against it, pressing my hand to my chest. In my previous life, I had heard those same words and believed them. I had let them convince me that Claire's future mattered more than my present, that their love for her meant they didn't have enough left over for me. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I had died and come back, and I had learned the most important lesson of all. You can't make someone love you. You can only save yourself. November 15th dawned cold and gray. I woke up at 5 in the morning, dressed in comfortable clothes, and packed a small bag with my phone, a change of clothes, and the journal where I had been documenting everything, my symptoms, my parents' neglect, the timeline of my previous life, just in case. Dr. Chen had arranged for a hospital transport to pick me up at 6. My parents didn't know. They thought I had agreed to the postponement, or maybe they just assumed I had no choice. They had left for Claire's audition the night before, driven to the city 4 hours away, checked into a hotel. They would be at the academy by 8, ready to watch Claire dance for her future. I left a note on the kitchen table. Gone for surgery, don't wait up. The transport arrived right on time. The driver was a kind-faced woman named Susan who chatted about the weather and didn't ask why I was alone. When we got to the hospital, Dr. Chen was waiting. "Evelyn." She pulled me into a hug, and I let myself sink into it for just a moment. "Where are your parents?" "Claire's audition." I pulled back, meeting her eyes. "They chose." Something fierce flashed across her face. "Then I choose you." "Come on, sweetheart. Let's fix your heart." The pre-op process was a blur of nurses and needles and paperwork. They asked me questions I had answered before in another life. Any allergies? Any previous surgeries? Next of kin? I gave them Dr. Chen's office number for the last one. She could be my next of kin. She was the only person who had chosen me. When they wheeled me into the operating room, I wasn't scared. I had died on a table like this before, alone and unloved. This time, I was choosing life. This time, I was fighting back. "Count backward from 10, the anesthesiologist said. 10, 9, 8. The world went dark. I woke up in recovery with Dr. Chen holding my hand. The first thing I felt was pain, sharp and immediate, radiating from the center of my chest. The second thing I felt was relief, so intense it brought tears to my eyes. I was alive. My heart was beating, steady and strong the way it should have beaten all along. "There she is," Dr. Chen said softly. "Welcome back, sweetheart. The surgery was a complete success." "My parents?" I rasped, my throat raw from the breathing tube. "No word from them." Her jaw tightened. "But you have visitors. 3 of them, actually." I blinked in confusion, and Dr. Chen stepped aside. Behind her stood a woman I didn't recognize. Tall, elegant, with silver hair and eyes the same shade of green as mine. Next to her was a man in an expensive suit and a younger woman who looked vaguely familiar. "Hello, Evelyn," the silver-haired woman said, and her voice was gentle but strong. "My name is Victoria Ashford. I'm your maternal grandmother." The world tilted. My maternal grandmother had died when I was 5. I had scattered memories of her, a warm laugh, the smell of roses, strong arms lifting me up. And then she was gone. And my mother never spoke of her again, except she hadn't died. She was standing right here. "I don't understand," I whispered. Victoria moved closer, and I could see tears in her eyes. "Your mother and I had a falling out when she married your father. I didn't approve of him, and she chose him over me. I told her that if she wanted my support, she needed to leave him. She refused. I told her not to come back until she did." She paused, her voice breaking. "I was angry, stubborn, proud, and I didn't know she was pregnant with you until years later. By then, the rift was too deep. Your mother refused to let me see you or your sister. She said I had made my choice and she had made hers." "How did you—" I couldn't finish the question. "Dr. Chen," Victoria said, glancing at the doctor with gratitude. "When she saw your application, saw your mother's name, she looked into your family history. She found me. And she told me that my granddaughter was dying because her parents were neglecting her medical care in favor of her sister's ballet career." The man in the suit stepped forward. "I'm James Chen, Dr. Chen's brother and attorney. Mrs. Ashford has filed for emergency custody of you, Evelyn. Given your parents' documented neglect and the CPS investigation, we have a strong case." I stared at them, unable to process what I was hearing. In my previous life, I had died alone. In this life, I had been prepared to survive alone. But now, why? The word came out broken. You don't even know me. Victoria sat on the edge of my bed, careful not to jostle the wires and tubes connecting me to various monitors. Because you're my granddaughter. Because I failed your mother, and I won't fail you. Because no child should have to beg for their life while their parents fund ballet lessons. The tears came then, hot and unstoppable. Not tears of grief or anger, but of relief. Of something I had forgotten existed. Hope. What about Claire? I asked. She's your granddaughter, too. Yes, Victoria said, and her face was sad. But Claire isn't being neglected. She's being spoiled, opaque, which is its own kind of harm, but not the kind that requires removal. If she wants a relationship with me, that door is open. But right now, my priority is you. I closed my eyes, exhausted and overwhelmed. What happens now? Now you recover, Dr. Chen said firmly. And we let the lawyers handle the rest. The rest turned out to be a legal storm that I watched from my hospital bed. Victoria's attorneys moved fast, filing emergency custody petitions and restraining orders. My parents, arriving back from Claire's audition late that night, found themselves barred from my hospital room and served with court papers. My mother called my hospital phone 17 times. I didn't answer. On the 18th call, I picked up. Evelyn, thank God, sweetheart, there's been a terrible misunderstanding. How was Claire's audition? I asked. Silence on the other end. How was Claire's audition? She did very well. She was amazing, actually. But, Evie, we need to talk about, did she get in? Another pause. Yes, she got a full scholarship to the National Ballet Academy. Good. I felt nothing. No jealousy, no anger, just a cold, distant satisfaction. Then it was worth it, wasn't it? Evelyn, please. I'm alive, Mom. Despite you. I had open heart surgery this morning, and I'm alive. And you weren't here because you were watching Claire dance. We thought you postponed it. You said, I said you could go to Claire's audition. I never said I wouldn't have the surgery. I could hear her crying now, real tears of shock and fear. Baby, please, let me come see you. Let me explain. The only thing you need to explain is to the judge. I'm going to live with Grandma Victoria now. You remember her, right? The woman you cut out of my life because she told you Dad was a selfish asshole. Turns out she was right. I hung up before she could respond. The custody hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks later, after I was released from the hospital. Victoria brought me to her house, a beautiful Victorian mansion in the historic district with gardens and high ceilings and a room she had kept ready for me just in case. Just in case of what? I asked, standing in the doorway of a bedroom that was bigger than the entire first floor of my parents' house. Just in case you found me, Victoria said. Or I found you. I never stopped hoping, Evelyn. The room was decorated in soft blues and greens with a window seat overlooking the garden. There were bookshelves filled with classics and new releases, a desk with a brand new laptop, and a closet full of clothes in my size. How did you know my size? I asked. Victoria smiled sadly. I've been watching from a distance for years. I hired a private investigator to send me photos, updates. I know it sounds creepy, but I needed to know you were okay. And when I saw you weren't, she trailed off, her hands clenched into fists. I should have intervened sooner. I'm so sorry. I set my bag down on the bed, a real bed, with a thick mattress and a mountain of pillows. You're intervening now. That's what matters. Over the next 2 weeks, I learned what it felt like to be someone's priority. Victoria took me to follow-up appointments with Dr. Chen. She hired a tutor to help me keep up with schoolwork while I recovered. She taught me to play chess in the library and let me beat her exactly once before crushing me in the rematch. She asked about my day, my thoughts, my dreams. She acted like a grandmother, like family. and slowly, carefully, I let myself believe it was real. The custody hearing was held in a small courtroom on a Wednesday morning. My parents arrived with their own lawyer, a nervous-looking man who kept shuffling papers. Claire wasn't there. She had started at the ballet academy and couldn't miss class. Of course she couldn't. The judge was a stern-faced woman named Judge Patricia Morrison who listened to both sides with the expression of someone who had heard every excuse in the book and believed none of them. My parents' lawyer argued that this was a misunderstanding, that my parents had been planning to attend my surgery, that they had only gone to Claire's audition because I had assured them it was fine. Victoria's lawyer, James Chen, calmly presented evidence to the contrary. My medical records showing years of ignored symptoms, my application for charity care explicitly stating my parents refused treatment, recordings of calls where my mother dismissed my health concerns, bank statements showing tens of thousands spent on Claire's training while I hadn't been to a dentist in 3 years. And then he called me to testify. I walked to the stand on shaky legs, still weak from surgery, and swore to tell the truth. The whole truth. Nothing but the truth. "Evelyn," James said gently, "why did you apply for charity medical care?" "Because my parents wouldn't take me to a doctor." My voice was steady. I'd been telling them for weeks that something was wrong. My mother kept saying I was being dramatic. My father said I was trying to take attention away from Claire. "Did they ever tell you explicitly that they wouldn't pay for your medical care?" "Not in those words, but they spent $50,000 on ballet lessons last year. When I asked if I could join the debate team, which cost $200, they said we couldn't afford it." "What happened when Dr. Chen scheduled your surgery?" I took a deep breath. "They tried to postpone it. They said Claire's audition was more important. They wanted to wait a few more weeks." "Did they say what would happen if the surgery was delayed?" "They said it would be fine. That other doctors had told them waiting wouldn't make a difference." James held up a document. "Your Honor, we've contacted every cardiac specialist in the state. None of them consulted with Mr. or Mrs. Winters. They lied to their daughter about her medical prognosis to justify attending a ballet audition." Judge Morrison's expression darkened. She turned to my parents. "Mr. and Mrs. Winters, did you or did you not accompany your daughter to her heart surgery?" My father stood, his face red. "Your Honor, we thought, yes or no?" "No." His voice was barely audible. "We went to our other daughter's audition." "And when did you become aware that the surgery was proceeding as scheduled?" "When we got served with custody papers at the hospital that night." The judge wrote something down, her pen scratching across paper like a death sentence. "And in the 8 hours between dropping your daughter off and the completion of her surgery, did you call to check on her?" Silence. "Did you call the hospital? Did you call the surgeon? Did you make any attempt to ensure your 14-year-old daughter survived open-heart surgery?" "We thought she had postponed it," my mother said, her voice breaking. "She said we could go to Claire's audition. We thought she understood." "Understood what, exactly? That her sister's dancing was more important than her life?" My mother crumpled into her seat, sobbing. My father put his arm around her, but his face was gray, defeated. Judge Morrison turned to me. "Evelyn, do you want to live with your grandmother?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Do you feel safe in her care?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Do you wish to have any contact with your parents or sister?" I hesitated. This was the moment where I could destroy them completely, cut them off forever, make them feel the abandonment I had felt dying alone on that table. But when I looked at my mother's tear-stained face, I didn't feel triumph. I just felt tired. "I'd like to see Claire," I said quietly. "If she wants to see me." "But my parents, not right now, maybe someday, but not now." Judge Morrison nodded. "Custody of Evelyn Marie Winters is awarded to Victoria Ashford, effective immediately. Mr. and Mrs. Winters, you will be permitted supervised visitation once per month, if Evelyn agrees. You will also be required to attend family counseling. Additionally, I'm ordering you to establish a trust fund for Evelyn's future medical expenses and education. equal to the amount you've spent on Claire's training over the past 3 years. $50,000 within 30 days. My father started to protest, but Judge Morrison silenced him with a look. You made a choice, she said coldly. You chose one daughter over the other. You can't undo that choice. But you can pay for it, literally. The gavel came down and it was over. We left the courthouse through a back entrance to avoid reporters. Apparently the story had leaked. Parents skipped daughter's heart surgery for ballet audition, and it had gone viral. My mother's Facebook was full of comments calling her a monster. My father's business had lost 3 major clients. Claire's Instagram, which she had made public to attract ballet scouts, was flooded with hate. I should have felt guilty. Instead, I just felt free. That night, Victoria made dinner. Real homemade dinner, not takeout or frozen meals. And we ate in the dining room like civilized people. Afterward, we sat in the library and she told me stories about my mother as a child. She was so bright, Victoria said sadly. So full of life. I don't know what happened. Maybe it was Michael, your father. He's very good at making people believe they're never good enough. Maybe she internalized that, and then she passed it on to you. Does that make it okay? I asked. No, Victoria said firmly. Hurt people, but that doesn't absolve them. Your mother made choices. She chose to prioritize Claire. She chose to ignore your suffering. Those were her decisions, and she has to live with the consequences. I curled up in the armchair, pulling a blanket around myself. Do you think she'll change? I don't know. People can change, but only if they want to. Right now, I think your mother is more concerned with how this looks than with what she's done. But maybe, with time and therapy, Victoria shrugged. We'll see. And Claire? Claire is a child. She's been raised in a bubble where she's the center of the universe. This will be hard for her, realizing that the world isn't as simple as she thought. But she's young enough to learn, and if she reaches out to you, I hope you'll give her a chance. I thought about that. Claire, who had cried and said she was sorry. Claire, who had offered to postpone her audition, even though we both knew she didn't mean it. Claire, who loved me in the thoughtless, careless way of someone who had never had to fight for anything. Maybe, I said, but not yet. Victoria nodded and went back to her book, and we sat in comfortable silence while the grandfather clock ticked in the corner. This was my life now, this quiet, peaceful existence where I was wanted and valued, where my health mattered and my opinions were heard, where I wasn't fighting for scraps of attention or love. It felt like a dream. A second chance I hadn't earned, but wouldn't waste. 3 months later, I was back at school, a new school, a private academy near Victoria's house where the classes were small and the teachers actually cared. I joined the debate team, which Claire had never let me join because it conflicted with her ballet schedule. I started taking art classes. I made friends who didn't know about my parents or my surgery, or the viral news story about the family that chose ballet over their daughter's life. I was just Evelyn, just me. And then, on a Saturday afternoon in February, Claire showed up at Victoria's door. I was in the library doing homework when Victoria came to get me. Claire is here, she said gently. She'd like to talk to you. You don't have to if you're not ready. I wasn't ready, but I followed Victoria to the front hall anyway. Claire stood on the doorstep in her ballet clothes, her hair pulled back in a tight bun. She looked thinner than I remembered, her face drawn and tired. She was only 11, but she looked older, worn down. Evie, her voice cracked. Can we talk? I looked at Victoria, who nodded and left us alone. Claire and I walked to the garden where early crocuses were pushing up through the last of the winter snow. We sat on a bench, and for a long moment, neither of us spoke. I'm sorry, Claire finally said. Oh, for everything, for not knowing, for being so selfish, for... Her voice broke. For letting them choose me. You didn't let them do anything, I said, surprising myself with my own gentleness. You were 11 years old, Claire. This wasn't your fault. But I knew. After that meeting, after the doctor said you could die, I knew. And I still let them take me to my audition. Did you want to go? She was quiet for a long time. I don't know. I wanted to make them proud. I've always wanted to make them proud, and ballet was how I did that. It was the only thing I was good at. That's not true, I said. You're good at lots of things. You're just the only one they cared about. Claire wiped her eyes. It's not fair. None of this is fair. You got Grandma Victoria and this beautiful house and a new school, and I'm stuck with them. With parents who chose my dreams over your life and can't understand why everyone hates us now. Do you hate them? Sometimes, she whispered. Is that terrible? No, I said. It's honest. We sat in silence watching the crocuses sway in the breeze. Two sisters, divided by our parents' choices, trying to find our way back to each other. I'm leaving the ballet academy, Claire said suddenly. I turned to stare at her. What? Why? Because every time I dance, I think about you on that operating table. Every time I do a pirouette or grand jeté, I remember that you almost died while I was performing. It's ruined for me now. I can't love it anymore. Claire, I'm not telling you this to make you feel guilty, she said quickly. I'm telling you because I want you to know that I'm making a different choice. Mom and Dad are furious. They say I'm throwing away my future, that this is what we've worked for my whole life. But it wasn't my whole life. It was theirs, and I don't want it anymore. I reached over and took her hand, and she squeezed back so hard it hurt. What do you want? I asked. I want my sister, she said simply. I want to be the kind of person who would have never gotten on that plane. Who would have stayed with you, even if it meant missing my audition. I can't go back and change what I did. But I can change who I become. The tears came then, for both of us. We cried in the garden while the crocuses bloomed around us, two girls trying to heal from wounds they didn't inflict but had to carry. When Victoria found us an hour later, we were still sitting on that bench, holding hands, talking about everything and nothing. She smiled and left us alone. Claire started coming over every Saturday after that. At first, it was awkward. We had grown up as strangers, divided by our parents' favoritism. But slowly we learned how to be sisters, real sisters, not just girls who shared parents. She told me about the pressure of being the favorite, the constant expectation to be perfect, the way every achievement felt hollow because it came at my expense. I told her about the loneliness of being invisible, the desperate need for approval that never came, the slow realization that I would have to save myself because no one else would. We were both casualties of our parents' dysfunction, just in different ways. My parents tried to contact me several times. Letters, emails, phone calls that Victoria screened. I read the letters once. Long, rambling apologies full of justifications and excuses. They were sorry. They had made a mistake. They loved me. They wanted me to come home. But they never once acknowledged the fundamental truth. They had valued Claire's happiness over my life. Not accidentally, not in a moment of panic, but deliberately, over and over, for years. Sorry wasn't enough. It would never be enough. In May, the $50,000 trust fund was established in my name. My parents fought it, claimed they couldn't afford it, tried to get the amount reduced. Victoria's lawyers buried them in paperwork. In the end, the money was deposited, along with another $20,000 for punitive damages. I used $10,000 to establish a scholarship fund at my new school for students from low-income families. I put $30,000 into a college fund, and the remaining $30,000, I donated it to Dr. Chen's charity program, the program that had saved my life when my own parents wouldn't. When my mother found out, she called Victoria in tears. How could Evelyn give away that money? We had to sell my mother's jewelry to pay that settlement, and she just gave it away? Victoria's response was ice cold. That money was hers to do with as she pleased. Perhaps if you had invested in her when it mattered, she would feel differently. But you didn't, so she doesn't. And for the record, Margaret, that wasn't your mother's jewelry, that was mine. I gave it to you when you got married, and you've been lying about its origins for years. My mother hung up. She didn't call back. Summer came, and with it, my 15th birthday. Victoria threw me a party, a real party, with friends from school and decorations and a cake that said "Happy Birthday, Evelyn" in blue frosting. Claire came, and Dr. Chen, and even James the attorney, who had fought for my custody. My parents weren't invited. We ate cake in the garden and played ridiculous party games, and I laughed until my sides hurt. And when I blew out the candles, I didn't wish for my parents to love me, or for my family to be whole, or for any of the impossible things I had wasted wishes on in my previous life. I wished for this, for more days like this one, surrounded by people who chose me, who valued me, who wouldn't trade me for anything. That night, after everyone had gone home and Claire had been picked up by her babysitter, our parents were too busy to collect her, Victoria found me in the library. "Good party?" she asked. "The best," I said honestly. She sat beside me, her silver hair gleaming in the lamplight. "You know, when Dr. Chen first called me, I was terrified. Terrified that I was too late, that you would die before I could reach you. Terrified that you wouldn't want me, that you would choose your parents over a grandmother you barely remembered." "I barely had parents to choose," I said. "You were the first person who chose me back." Victoria pulled me into a hug, and I let myself be held. In my previous life, I had died believing I was unlovable, that there was something fundamentally wrong with me that made my parents care more about Claire's dreams than my survival. But I had been wrong. There was nothing wrong with me. I was worthy of love, of care, of someone showing up. I had just been looking for it in the wrong place. "I love you, Evelyn," Victoria whispered. "I will always choose you." "I love you too, Grandma." We sat there in the quiet library, grandmother and granddaughter, building a family from the ruins of the old one. 5 years later, I graduated from high school as valedictorian. Victoria sat in the front row, crying proud tears. Claire was there too, in her first year at a liberal arts college, studying art history instead of ballet. Dr. Chen came, and James, and half my debate team. My parents sent a card. I didn't open it. In my speech, I talked about second chances, about the importance of choosing yourself when no one else will, about the people who show up when it matters and the ones who don't. I didn't mention my parents by name. I didn't need to. Everyone knew. After graduation, reporters asked if I planned to reconcile with my family. I smiled and said, "I already have. Victoria Ashford is my family. So is Dr. Chen, who saved my life. So is my sister Claire, who chose to be better. That's all the family I need." The video went viral, again. My mother sent an email. "How could you say that, after everything we've done for you?" I deleted it without responding. I went to college on a full scholarship, funded partially by Victoria, partially by my trust fund, and partially by my own merit. I studied biomedical engineering with the goal of designing better heart valves, better surgical techniques, better ways to save kids like me. Claire and I talked every week. She was happy, lighter, free from the crushing weight of our parents' expectations. She had a boyfriend who loved her for who she was, not what she could achieve. She was learning to paint, badly but joyfully. "Do you ever regret leaving ballet?" I asked her once. "Every day," she said honestly. "But I don't regret choosing you over it. That's the only part I got right." As for my parents, I heard about them occasionally through the grapevine. My father's business had recovered somewhat, though he'd never regain his old reputation. My mother had become a recluse, unable to face the judgment of her former friends. They had sold their house and moved to a smaller town where no one knew their story. I felt nothing when I heard these updates. No satisfaction, no guilt, no grief. They were just strangers who had briefly been in my life, people I had outgrown and left behind. On the 5th anniversary of my surgery, Dr. Chen invited me to her office. When I arrived, she had champagne, sparkling cider for me, since I was still only 19, and a small cake. "To surviving," she said, raising her glass. "To choosing life," I countered. We clinked glasses, and she smiled. "You know, when I first met you, I was so angry. Angry at your parents, angry at the system that let them neglect you, angry at myself for not finding you sooner. But watching you these past 5 years, Evelyn, you've become remarkable." "I had good teachers," I said, gesturing at her. No, she said firmly. You did this yourself. You saved yourself. I just gave you the tools. That night, I drove back to Victoria's house, my house, and sat in the garden where Claire and I had reconciled 5 years ago. The crocuses were blooming again, faithful as ever, pushing through the earth year after year. I pulled out my journal, the one I had started documenting everything in. I hadn't written in it in years. But tonight, I felt like I needed to close this chapter properly. Dear old Evelyn, you died alone, unloved, believing you weren't enough. I'm writing to tell you that you were wrong. You were always enough. Our parents were just too broken to see it. I don't know why we got a second chance. I don't know what cosmic force sent us back, gave us the knowledge to save ourselves. But I'm grateful. Because in saving my life, I learned how to live. I learned that love isn't about blood. It's about choice. It's about showing up. It's about the people who sit beside your hospital bed and the ones who choose ballet over your heartbeat. I learned that you can't make someone love you. You can only decide if you'll love yourself enough to walk away. I learned that second chances aren't about revenge. They're about choosing better, being better, finding the people who choose you back. I'm happy now, really, truly happy. I have a grandmother who loves me fiercely, a sister who's learning how to be a real sister, friends who value me, a future that isn't measured in heartbeats until death but in years of possibility. Our parents still don't understand what they did wrong. Maybe they never will. But that's not my problem anymore. I've forgiven them, not because they deserve it, but because I deserve peace. You died, believing you were worthless. I lived to prove you wrong. Rest now, old Evelyn. Your fight is over. I'll take it from here. Love, the girl who survived. I closed the journal and looked up at the stars, feeling the steady, strong beat of my repaired heart in my chest. Somewhere in another life, I had died alone on an operating table, abandoned by the people who should have loved me most. But in this life, I had chosen myself, and that had made all the difference, the end. And that